The first thing to disappear was the clock. Not physically, but in the minds of everyone inside the club. At 11:17 that night, the brass clock above the training floor kept ticking, but nobody heard it anymore. They were listening to Bruce Lee stand in the center of the room and ask one question that made every rule on the wall feel suddenly fragile. It was not a public arena, it was not a tournament, and it was not a film set. It was a private martial arts club above an old furniture warehouse in Los Angeles. A place where instructors met after hours to argue, compare, judge, drink coffee, and protect the little kingdoms they had built around their styles. The club called itself the Western Martial Arts Society, though everyone who mattered simply called it the Room. You did not join the room casually. You were invited, watched, tested, and measured. The walls were covered with framed certificates, tournament photographs, weapons racks, and a large chalkboard titled Principles of Real Combat. The chalkboard was the heart of the place. On it were rules written by men who believed experience had finally become certainty. Never give ground, never cross the center line blindly, never mix systems, never abandon structure, never fight without stance. The words looked disciplined. They also looked like a cage trying to pass as wisdom. Bruce Lee arrived late. Not dramatically late, but late enough for the room to have spoken about him before he entered. That mattered. Rooms reveal their real opinions before the guest arrives. By the time Bruce stepped through the narrow door, most of the men inside had already decided what kind of man he was. Some called him brilliant. Some called him reckless. Some called him too young, too fast, too confident, too unwilling to respect boundaries. One older instructor said he was dangerous because he taught students to distrust tradition before they were mature enough to understand it. Another said the real danger was that some traditions had stopped earning trust. The argument had been warm before Bruce entered. It became cold when he appeared. He wore a simple dark jacket, moved lightly across the floor, and bowed to the senior instructors without exaggeration. His eyes passed over the room once, the wall of certificates, the chalkboard, the folded arms, the men already waiting to be unimpressed. The president of the club was Harold Voss, a fictional but very recognizable kind of authority figure. Mid-40s, silver at the temples, precise posture, expensive watch, black belt, and the calm voice of a man who believed politeness could make control look like hospitality. He greeted Bruce with a smile too perfect to be warm. "Mr. Lee," Voss said, "we invited you because your ideas have created discussion." Discussion was the safe word for conflict. Everyone in the room understood it. Bruce nodded. He did not answer the hidden accusation. A hidden accusation loses some of its power when the person receiving it refuses to dig it out for everyone. Voss led him toward the chalkboard. "We hope tonight you could explain your method in relation to established combat principles." Established combat principles. The phrase made several instructors sit straighter. Bruce looked at the board, then at the men seated beneath it. "Maybe," he said, "but first I want to ask who established them." That was when the first silence entered. Not the final silence, not yet. This one was smaller, like a door closing in another room. Voss smiled, but his eyes sharpened. "Experience established them," he answered. Bruce looked again at the chalkboard. "Whose experience?" A few instructors shifted in their chairs. The question was not rude. That made it more difficult. Rudeness can be dismissed. Precision cannot. Bruce had not insulted the rules. He had simply placed them back in human hands, where they looked less like laws of nature and more like choices made by men. Voss tapped the chalkboard with 2 fingers. Every rule here was earned through contact. Bruce nodded. "Good. Then it should survive contact again." The line landed softly, but it changed the evening. The men had invited Bruce to explain himself. Bruce had turned the room into the thing that needed explanation. The first instructor to stand was Martin Greer, a heavy karate man with thick forearms and a voice shaped by command. He believed in pressure, forward drive, and ending a fight before uncertainty could enter. "Rules keep students alive," Greer said. "Freedom without structure makes sloppy fighters." Bruce agreed too quickly for Greer's comfort. "Yes," he said, "structure helps the beginner. But if the structure cannot be left, it becomes the master." Greer looked toward Voss as if asking whether they were going to allow philosophy to walk around the room without supervision. Another man stood, Thomas Bell, a fencing instructor who had adapted blade concepts into empty-hand training. He was lean, elegant, and proud of distance. Without clear lines, Bell said, "You give chaos an invitation." Bruce looked at him. Chaos is already invited. The question is whether you can move when it arrives. The third voice came from a judo coach named Samuel Price, who remained seated while speaking. A man must commit to something. Too much adaptation makes hesitation. Bruce turned toward him and smiled faintly. Only if adaptation happens in the head. If it is in the body, it is not hesitation. It is response. The room did not like that answer. It was too simple, and simple answers are dangerous when they do not feel easy. Voss raised one hand, regaining the shape of the meeting. Perhaps demonstration would serve us better than debate. Several men nodded. They had wanted a demonstration from the beginning, though not for the reason they said. They did not want to learn first. They wanted to locate the flaw. Every room built on certainty does this to a new idea. It asks the idea to perform under the eyes of men who are not watching for truth, but for a place to insert dismissal. Bruce understood the room completely by then. Voss drew 3 lines on the chalkboard. Stance, line, commitment. Let us test one principle at a time, he said. Nothing excessive, nothing personal. Bruce looked at the words. If it is not personal, it is not fighting, he answered. The room stiffened. He did not mean rage, he meant reality. A fight is always personal because a body is personal, fear is personal, timing is personal, balance is personal. Even a polite exchange becomes personal the instant another man's intent enters your space. The club preferred rules because rules made danger feel administrative. Greer stepped onto the floor first. His students, seated along the wall, leaned forward. He wore a white GI and the confidence of a man whose pressure had solved many problems. Bruce removed his jacket and placed it over the back of a chair. The gesture was quiet, almost gentle. The room followed it anyway. Voss explained the test. Greer would advance in a committed line. Bruce would respond while maintaining recognizable structure. The phrase recognizable structure mattered. The room was not only testing whether Bruce could defend himself, it was testing whether his answers could be judged by the room's vocabulary. Greer took his stance. Bruce did not mirror it. Greer's eyes narrowed. That was the first violation. The club liked agreements before contact. Bruce preferred contact to reveal the agreement. Voss said, "Begin." Greer drove forward with a straight punch and the weight of a wall moving behind it. Bruce was not there. He did not retreat far enough to satisfy the rule of giving ground, and he did not stand still long enough to be called rooted. He shifted on an angle so small the eyes nearly missed it. His hand touched Greer's forearm, and Greer's committed line found itself committed to empty air. Before Greer could reset, Bruce was beside him with 2 fingers resting lightly near the ribs. Not a strike, a conclusion. Greer stopped because the body understood the ending before pride did. Around the room, men looked at the chalkboard, then back at the floor. Again, Greer said. His voice had lost its meeting room authority. Now it belonged to the mat. Bruce nodded. Greer attacked with more pressure. Bruce changed less. That was worse. A beginner defeats force by moving a lot. A master defeats force by making the necessary movement smaller than the attacker's expectation. Greer stumbled 1 step past him. Bruce touched his shoulder blade and guided him into balance rather than letting him fall. That mercy irritated Greer for 1 second, then confused him for another. If Bruce had thrown him hard, Greer could have called it roughness. Control left him fewer excuses. Voss cleared his throat. The line principle is not yet finished. Bruce looked at him. It finished when his line stopped finding me. The sentence did not sound like boasting. It sounded like reporting weather. Several instructors dislike that more than pride. Pride can be attacked. Observation simply stands there. Thomas Bell rose next. He removed his jacket with the care of a man preparing for a duel. Bell's world was distance, timing, and elegant entry. He looked at Bruce as if Greer's failure had been predictable. A heavy man could be turned, but a line controlled by precision, Bell believed, would be harder to ignore. Bell asked for a longer starting distance. Voss allowed it. Bruce did not object. The room relaxed slightly because distance looked like fairness. Bruce understood that distance can be a comfort blanket for people who fear surprise. Give them the distance they prefer, and they believe reality has agreed to their terms. Bell moved first with a fencing-style step, fast and narrow, hand flicking toward Bruce's face as a marker for entry. Bruce did not chase the hand. He entered on the timing behind it. Bell's marker touched nothing, and Bruce's palm arrived lightly against Bell's chest before Bell's second motion had a chance to become an idea. Bell stepped back, eyes alive now. That was better than anger. He had felt something worth understanding. He came again, changing rhythm. Bruce changed with him, not like a man switching styles, but like water changing shape around the container offered by the moment. 3 exchanges passed. Bell's distance collapsed each time at a different point. Once Bruce entered early, once he waited. Once he seemed to invite the attack and remove the invitation at the last instant. The club had wanted Bruce to show his system. Instead, he kept showing the insufficiency of fixed expectation. Bell bowed slightly. It was not surrender. It was respect for information. Bruce returned it. Greer, still breathing hard near the wall, watched that bow carefully. One man had lost an exchange and learned. Another had lost and was still deciding what the loss meant. Samuel Price stood last. The judo coach was not flashy. He carried himself with the weight of a man who trusted contact more than distance. "If I touch you," Price said, "the argument changes." Bruce nodded. Yes. That yes was important. Bruce did not deny the truth inside another man's art. Price approached slowly. No rush, no performance. His hands moved toward Bruce's sleeve and shoulder line, searching for grip and balance. The room leaned forward because this test felt different. Striking could be intercepted. Distance could be broken. But grip, once established, becomes a conversation with the skeleton. Price touched Bruce's sleeve. For half a second, several men thought the club had found the answer. Then Bruce changed his body before the grip became ownership. His shoulders softened, his foot adjusted, his center moved, and the grip that should have controlled him found itself holding a door that had already opened. Price tried to enter for a throw. Bruce did not resist like a stiff opponent. He followed enough to remove the throw's certainty, then stopped where Price needed continuation. It was infuriatingly subtle. Price's technique did not fail dramatically. It simply lost the agreement required to become real. Bruce placed one hand on Price's elbow and the other near his chest. Again, no cruelty. Again, a conclusion. Price smiled despite himself. "Interesting," he said. In a room full of pride, that word sounded almost heroic. It meant the mind had stayed open under pressure. Voss did not smile. The 3 tests had not produced the flaw he wanted. Worse, each test had made the chalkboard look less complete. The rules were still useful, but they no longer looked final. A useful rule can survive humility. A final rule cannot. Voss stepped onto the floor himself. The room changed. Presidents and hosts are supposed to remain above the demonstration. When they enter it, authority becomes flesh and can be touched. Bruce watched him approach without surprise. He had known from the beginning that the room's real challenge was not Greer, Bell, or Price. Voss removed his watch and placed it on the table beneath the brass clock. That small act said he wanted seriousness. It also said he believed seriousness could be arranged by ritual. Bruce stepped back once, giving him room. "What principle?" Bruce asked. Voss looked at the chalkboard. "Control," he said. Bruce repeated the word softly. Control. It was the word the club loved most. Control of stance, control of distance, control of students, control of definitions. Bruce nodded. "Then let us see who is controlling what." They faced each other in the center. Voss moved with less speed than Greer, less elegance than Bell, less contact confidence than Price. But he had something the others did not, the deep habit of commanding rooms. He used pauses like weapons, expecting others to enter them nervously. Bruce did not enter. He let the pause become too long. Voss blinked first. It was small, almost invisible, but several men saw it. Control had already shifted before anyone moved. That is the part of fighting spectators often miss. The exchange begins when intention begins, not when hands collide. Voss attacked with a clean, straight line. Bruce intercepted and stopped just short of contact. Voss withdrew quickly and tried to reset the meeting room mask, but the floor had taken it from him. He attacked again, this time adding a low kick. Bruce entered on the half beat and placed a palm against his shoulder. Voss turned, trying to trap the arm. Bruce's arm was no longer there. He had not pulled away dramatically. He had simply removed the condition Voss needed. The room saw authority reach for control and close around absence. A murmur moved through the students and instructors. Voss heard it and tightened. Bruce felt the tightening before it became visible. The next exchange ended with Voss frozen. Bruce standing at an angle, one hand near Voss's throat, the other controlling the space between them without gripping anything. The brass clock ticked above them. For the first time, everyone heard it. Then, strangely, they stopped hearing it again. The room had narrowed to the stillness between Bruce's hand and Voss's throat. No one spoke. The martial arts club, built on rules and arguments, had run out of language. Bruce lowered his hand and stepped back. He did not smile. "Control is not holding everything," he said. "Control is knowing what must be held and what must be released." The sentence moved through the room slowly. It did not destroy the chalkboard. It made the chalkboard smaller. Voss stared at him, breathing through his nose. He could have become angry. Some part of him wanted to, but anger would only prove the lesson. He looked at Greer, Bell, and Price, each of whom had been touched by a different part of the same truth. Price spoke first. "The rules are not wrong, Kuniner," he said. Bruce turned toward him. "No, but if they cannot move, they will be wrong tomorrow." That answer saved the room from humiliation. It allowed the rules to remain useful without allowing them to remain idols. Bell nodded. "So the principle is adaptation." Bruce shook his head. "Adaptation is one word. Directness is one word. Structure is one word. Freedom is one word. None of them can fight for you." The men listened. Even Voss listened. Bruce walked to the chalkboard and picked up a piece of chalk. He did not erase the rules. That surprised them. Instead, he drew a circle around the entire list. Then he wrote one word beneath it: test. The room watched the chalk dust fall. "Keep what works," Bruce said, "but keep testing what you think works." The moment a rule becomes too proud to be tested, it stops being a rule and becomes a superstition. Several instructors lowered their eyes. Superstition was a hard word for men who believed themselves practical. Greer looked at his own hands. Bell looked at the floor. Price smiled faintly again. Voss remained motionless, but something in his face had loosened. The club had not been destroyed. That was important. Bruce was not there to burn the room down. He was there to open a window. One of the younger students raised a hand, then lowered it, then raised it again. "Mr. Lee," he asked, "how do we know when a rule is helping us and when we are hiding behind it?" That question did more than any attack. It proved the room had begun changing. Bruce answered without rushing. "When a rule helps you see more, keep it. When it makes you see less, question it. When it protects your ego from reality, break it before reality breaks you." The young student nodded as if he had been handed something both useful and frightening. Voss finally moved toward the chalkboard. He looked at the word test beneath his rules. His hand lifted as if to erase it, then stopped. The room watched him more closely than it had watched the exchanges. He lowered his hand. That was his first honest movement of the night. "Leave it," Voss said. 2 words, nothing theatrical. But in that club, they were almost revolutionary. The president had allowed a foreign word to remain beneath the room's sacred list. The word test sat there quietly, looking less like rebellion than responsibility. Bruce picked up his jacket. Several men stood, unsure whether the evening was over. It felt over because the main resistance had been touched. It felt unfinished because every useful lesson is unfinished. The club had not received a new system. It had received a problem it could not politely forget. Greer approached first. "You made me miss with almost nothing," he said. Bruce corrected him gently. "You missed because you decided where I had to be." Greer repeated the sentence under his breath, not liking it, but keeping it. That is how real learning often begins. Bell came next. You entered without accepting my distance. Bruce nodded. Distance is information, not permission. Bell smiled at that. The way a man smiles when a useful sentence lands in a place his own training has prepared. Price shook Bruce's hand. You let me grip you without letting me own you. Bruce smiled faintly. Contact is not ownership. Price laughed once. He would remember that line because it belonged to judo and to life at the same time. Voss remained by the chalkboard. The others drifted into smaller conversations, but the room's attention still returned to him. Pride does not vanish because a man says leave it. It must now live with what has been left. Voss looked older than he had at the beginning of the night. Bruce walked toward him. Your room is strong, he said. Voss looked surprised. Compliment after correction can be harder to receive than insult. Strong rooms can become closed rooms, Bruce continued, but if they open, they become stronger. Voss looked at the chalkboard. And if they do not open, Bruce answered, then younger men will leave them and learn somewhere else. The line struck the president cleanly because it named the fear behind his control. He was not only protecting rules, he was trying to keep the future from walking out. The younger student who had asked the question stood near the door listening. Voss saw him. For the first time that evening, he seemed to understand that authority cannot hold students by tightening around them forever. It must give them truth strong enough to keep them by choice. The meeting ended after midnight. Men put away chairs, gathered cups, folded mats, and spoke in lower voices than before. The chalkboard remained at the front of the room with every old rule still written there, and one new word beneath them. Test. That word changed the room more than a knockout would have. A knockout gives people a winner and a loser. A word placed correctly gives them homework. Bruce Lee had not come to prove that all rules were foolish. He had come to prove that untested rules become sleepy. Outside, the warehouse stairs smelled of rain and dust. Bruce descended alone with his jacket over one shoulder. Behind him, the club did not erupt in argument. It stayed quiet. But this was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of men listening to the sound of their own assumptions shifting. For Greer, the assumption was that pressure decided truth. For Bell, that distance could control reality. For Price, that contact could secure ownership. For Voss, that authority could preserve a room by keeping its definition still. Bruce touched each assumption differently and left each man responsible for what he had felt. That responsibility is important. Bruce did not hand them slogans to repeat. He had no patience for dead phrases. Even his famous ideas were meant to be lived, not collected. A phrase can inspire a beginner, but if it is never tested, it becomes decoration on the wall beside the certificates. The club had many decorations: certificates, belts, photographs, polished weapons, old tournament posters, and now one chalk word that did not match the room's furniture: test. It was ugly compared with the framed achievements. That made it honest. Truth often enters a proud room without matching the curtains. Weeks later, according to the story, Voss changed the meetings. He still kept the rules. He still valued structure. But every month, one principle had to be challenged by someone trained outside the club's comfort. Some members hated it. Some left. The room became smaller for a while, then better. Greer began teaching students to attack without assuming the opponent would honor the line. Bell began training entries from broken rhythm. Price began drilling grip transitions against people who refused to become good handles. Voss, slowly and not always gracefully, learned to let younger instructors ask sharper questions. That is the kind of victory Bruce Lee created when the stories understood properly. Not a room of men defeated at his feet, a room of men disturbed enough to train differently. Disturbance is underrated. Comfort keeps a system alive in name. Disturbance keeps it alive in function. People often remember Bruce Lee as the man who broke rules. That is incomplete. Breaking rules is easy if a person only wants attention. Bruce challenged rules to see whether they still contained life. If they did, he used them. If they did not, he cut through them without ceremony. The club wanted him to submit his method to their board. Instead, he submitted their board to reality. That reversal is why the night mattered. The question changed from is Bruce Lee legitimate to are we still honest? Strong rooms fear that question because it does not flatter anyone, but honest rooms need it. A martial arts club that cannot question itself becomes a museum with sweat on the floor. It may still look alive. People may still bow, strike, throw, and shout, but the living edge is gone. Bruce carried that edge with him, and it made sleeping rooms uncomfortable. The silence he created was not empty. It was full of unfinished answers. That is why the title of the story works. He silenced the club, but not by frightening it into obedience. He silenced it by making its loudest certainties suddenly require evidence. Evidence is a brutal teacher. It does not care how long a rule has been repeated. It does not care whose photograph hangs above it. It does not care how many students nodded yesterday. Evidence arrives through contact, timing, pressure, failure, and the willingness to look again. Bruce Lee's genius was not that he rejected everything. It was that he refused to let anything become sacred before it had survived the present moment. Tradition could be useful, structure could be useful, distance could be useful, contact could be useful. But usefulness had to keep proving itself. That message still matters because every generation builds its own chalkboard. The words change, but the danger remains. Never do this. Always do that. This system is complete. That method is fake. This is how real people fight. Every chalkboard begins as guidance and risks becoming a wall. Bruce's question remains the same. Whose experience wrote that rule? And does it still work when life moves differently? It is not a comfortable question. It threatens teachers, students, institutions, and anyone who has mistaken repetition for truth. The Western Martial Arts Society did not become Bruce Lee's club. That would have missed the point. It remained itself, but less asleep. That is a better ending. Influence should not always produce copies. The best influence makes the original thing more honest. Voss did not become Bruce. Greer did not stop being Greer. Bell kept his distance work. Price kept his grips. But each man left the room with one less certainty and one more responsibility. In martial arts, that is not a small exchange. The brass clock kept ticking after everyone left. It had measured the meeting in minutes, but not in meaning. Meaning had arrived in the pauses. After the first question, after Greer missed, after Bell lost distance, after Price lost ownership, after Voss heard control redefined. Those pauses are where Bruce Lee often lived. Not in empty silence, but in the charged space before a person admits what he has seen. He understood that the body can learn faster than pride. His demonstrations made the body answer first, leaving pride to catch up embarrassed and late. That night, pride caught up slowly. It had to walk past the chalkboard, past the old rules, past the word test, past the younger student who had dared to ask a useful question. Pride did not die. It rarely does, but it had been given work. Work is better than defeat. Defeat alone can make a man bitter. Work gives him direction. Bruce did not leave the club with a trophy because the trophy would have been too small. He left them with work. That was heavier and more respectful. If the story feels different from a fight story, that is why. The opponent was not only a man. The opponent was a room's attachment to being finished. Bruce Lee challenged the idea that any living art can ever be finished while life keeps changing its questions. The room went silent because it understood the challenge. It could no longer pretend that the chalkboard had answered everything. It could only decide whether to keep testing or begin worshiping old answers again. That decision is the real ending of every martial arts lesson. For the viewer, the lesson is clear. Do not destroy rules just to feel free. Do not worship rules just to feel safe. Use them, test them, sharpen them, and release them when they stop helping you see. Freedom without discipline becomes noise. Discipline without freedom becomes sleep. Bruce Lee stood between those two failures and refused both. That is why he was difficult to categorize. Traditionalists thought he was too free. Rebels could forget how disciplined he was. But the real power was in the combination. Freedom tested by discipline, discipline kept alive by freedom. The club learned that combination the hard way, but not the cruel way. That distinction matters. Bruce's sharpest lessons did not always require injury. Sometimes all he needed was a question, a small angle, a touch near the ribs, a word written under the rules. Test. That word is the whole night compressed into chalk. Test your rule, test your stance, test your anger, test your confidence, test your teacher, test your rebellion, test your comfort, test the thing you are most afraid might be incomplete. And when it fails, do not worship the failure either. Learn, adjust, keep moving. That is what made Bruce Lee's philosophy alive. It was not a slogan on a poster. It was a demand placed on the body and the mind at the same time. The Western Martial Arts Society wanted Bruce Lee to explain himself beneath their rules. By the end, the rules had to explain themselves beneath his question. That reversal silenced the room because everyone inside it recognized the truth. The strongest rule is not the one repeated longest. It is the one still honest after contact. The next morning, someone probably swept chalk dust from the floor beneath the board. That image matters. A proud room had been changed by something as ordinary as dust falling from a word. No broken bones, no trophy, no roaring crowd. Just chalk dust and men who had to train differently. That is why this story belongs to Bruce Lee's legacy. It shows a quieter kind of dominance, not domination over people, but domination over false certainty. He could silence a club because he did not need the club to disappear. He only needed the lie inside it to stop speaking so loudly. And once the lie grew quiet, better questions could be heard. That was the victory. The night did not end with Bruce Lee owning the room. It ended with the room no longer owning its members in quite the same way. Something had opened and everyone could feel the air. A martial art lives only as long as it can breathe. Bruce Lee knew that. He walked into a room full of rules and did not tell them to stop breathing. He showed them where they had been holding their breath. That is why the brass clock disappeared from their minds. Time had not stopped. Certainty had. For one charged hour, men who believed they were finished became students again. And in the deepest sense, that is what Bruce Lee did wherever he went. He made finished people begin. The final image is not Bruce striking anyone. It is the chalkboard after he left, the old rules still written, the new word underneath, and the room too quiet to erase it. That silence was not defeat. It was the sound of a club deciding whether it still wanted to be alive. A living club does not fear questions that make it uncomfortable. It fears the day no one asks them anymore. Bruce Lee understood this better than most men in that room. He was not interested in comfort pretending to be respect. He was interested in respect strong enough to survive honest testing. That is why the younger student's question mattered almost as much as the demonstrations. The future of the room spoke through him. It asked how to tell the difference between guidance and hiding. Bruce answered him directly because the future deserved a cleaner answer than pride would have offered. Voss may have remembered that most of all, not being stopped, not being touched, not hearing the clock return. The younger student's question showed him what his control had almost cost. A room can preserve its rules so tightly that the next generation has to leave just to breathe. Bruce Lee did not ask the young men to abandon their teachers. He asked the teachers to remain worthy of being followed. That is a harder lesson for authority than any kick. Authority wants loyalty. Bruce demanded usefulness. Loyalty without usefulness becomes obedience to a shadow. The club's silence, then, was not weakness. It was a door opening inward. Some men would walk through it. Some would stand near it and complain about the draft. But no one could honestly say the door had not been open. And that is the legacy of the night. A private club, a wall of rules, a brass clock, a chalkboard, and one man who asked whether certainty could still survive contact. By the end, nobody had the courage to call the old rules final. The room had been silenced by possibility. Possibility is often more frightening than defeat. Defeat gives a person an ending. Possibility gives him responsibility. Bruce Lee left that responsibility behind like chalk dust on the floor, impossible to unsee once the light touched it. The club had asked for explanation. It received a mirror, and the mirror did not blink. The strangest thing about the club after Bruce left was that nothing visible had changed. The certificates were still framed. The weapons still hung straight. The chairs were still crooked. The chalkboard still held the old rules. Yet the room felt less certain, and that small loss of certainty was the beginning of its honesty. Voss stayed alone after the others went downstairs. He stood before the board with chalk dust on his fingers, staring at the word test as if it had been written by a younger version of himself he no longer recognized. Authority can survive correction, but only if it stops confusing correction with attack. The younger student returned because he had forgotten his coat. He saw Voss standing there and almost left without speaking. Then Voss said, "Ask the question again next month." The student froze. It was not an apology exactly. It was better. It was permission for the future to keep breathing. That moment matters because Bruce Lee's influence was rarely complete in the instant people saw him move. His real influence often began later, when someone repeated the lesson in a quieter room without him there. A style changes when the teacher changes what questions are allowed. Greer would still teach pressure. Bell would still teach distance. Price would still teach grips. Voss would still run the club. But after that night, each of them had to leave a little space inside his certainty for reality to enter. That space was small, but small openings can save large rooms. The lesson also protected Bruce from being misunderstood as a man who hated rules. He did not hate rules. He hated sleeping inside them. He knew a rule could be a bridge for a beginner and a prison for an expert. The danger was not structure. The danger was forgetting that structure had a purpose beyond itself. That is why the club's silence should not be mistaken for surrender. It was the silence of men realizing they could no longer use old words cheaply. Control had to mean more. Distance had to mean more. Contact had to mean more. Structure had to keep proving it was alive. The next meetings were uncomfortable, and that was good. Comfort would have meant the night had passed over them like weather. Instead, it entered the bones of the club. Men interrupted themselves. Students asked why. Instructors paused before saying always or never. Those tiny pauses were Bruce's real footprint. A person who only wants entertainment may prefer a cleaner ending. Bruce defeats the club, everyone applauds. The room converts instantly. But real influence is messier. It leaves men thinking, resisting, changing unevenly. That mess is more believable and more useful than instant worship. The final power of the night was not that Bruce silenced the club forever. It was that he taught it a better reason to speak. Speak after testing, teach after feeling, correct after listening, preserve what survives and release what only survives because no one has challenged it. So the club went silent, yes, but silence was not the grave of the room. It was the pause before a different kind of training. The clock kept ticking. The word test remained. And somewhere inside that old warehouse, martial arts became a little less certain and a little more alive.